to Pro Booth Talk, photo booth insight, tips, and banter recorded by boothers for boothers. Brought to you by ProBoothTalk.com.
Welcome back to Pro Booth Talk. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jason. Hi, everybody. I'm doing good.
So you know what drives me crazy when I'm reading the forums?
What?
People that treat their business like their employees. Like I constantly will see people say things like, I'm set up in a back room today and only did 12 prints, so I'm getting paid to hang around and not print anything and save that money. Or I saw someone once say that they booked enough jobs for March, so they're canceling all the rest of them because they are good enough. I actually screenshot that. I'll send it to you sometime. They canceled a bunch because they had enough and they felt confident about it. I've seen someone say that, and they're actually upset. This person, this was in a private group that was saying that their kid was sick, so they had to cancel an event and were angry that the client didn't understand. My kid's sick. What am I supposed to do? And this is like the mentality that employees have and not owners. And if you're a business owner, if you're a photo booth owner, it's time to start acting like an owner and not an employee. And I get it. A lot of people are coming from an employee background. They've been an employee most of their lives. But, you know, when there's like a ball of tape on the floor in the office, the person that's typically going to pick that up is me. Like my employees, they just walk by it. So be the person that picks up the tape. That's what I'm getting at.
How do you define an employer mentality and an employee mentality?
So to me, that person that has the owner mentality is they've got the success of the business in mind, not their own personal gain. They're thinking of the business first instead of themselves. They're owning responsibility. They're making hard decisions. It boils down mostly to that first, thinking of the company first instead of themselves. Obviously, you know, things happen, kids get sick, but you have to have backup plans for that. Like there's no other industry where that kind of thing would be accepted. Or maybe there is. Like, I guess if you have an operation and the doctor's like, hey, my kid's sick, can't come in. I mean, that sucks, but you know, that's a very specialized service and that's different. But the photo booth, like this is someone's wedding or other landmark celebration. And I'm not suggesting that the photo booth is technically going to ruin it, especially if you're in a backyard or something. But those are the selling points that I use. Like when I see these posts, like the biggest takeaway I get from them is this is going in my conversation with the next person that I'm talking to. You know, this is why you're not hiring these other companies. This company called in because their kid was sick. Is this your wedding? Or are you concerned about people showing up and actually being there? Because if you are, hire a real company, not just someone with a side hustle that has a photo booth in their garage and printed up some business cards.
Yeah, that's insane. I see that a lot with people who don't take ownership of their company, their business. You see a lot of people who depend on others for answers to basically finding the solution. I feel like owner mentality is where you have a problem that comes your way and you find a solution around it. You know, if your child is sick, you find a way to get someone out there with a booth. There's white labeling. There's, you know, calling your team members, is calling your partners. Owner mentality is more of not drowning in your problem, but working on finding that solution. And I feel like a lot of boothers have more of an employee mentality where they're looking to someone else for the answers. You as the owner should be the one providing the answers, the solutions to the questions, the problems that arise.
Proactive problem solving and ultimately like ownership of the outcomes of those decisions.
Yeah. I mean, like I've seen people who, you know, they'll sit there and say, oh, my staff did this and the client complained and my staff and what it boils down to is it's you as the owner should be the one training your staff on how to manage these issues that arise, how to client face, how to manage on-site issues. You as the owner should be the one figuring out how to troubleshoot. If you're not tech, I know some of us in this industry, we're not that tech savvy. There's companies out there that are there to support your team. You can just, if you're not tech savvy and your team's not tech savvy, you can't provide that support. Find the support. Sign up for the services where, your team has resources that they need to be successful on site. Blaming your employee doesn't really benefit you or your company. Your blame shifting is not how your company will grow, especially if you have team members that work for you. If they can't look to you to lead, they can't follow you with confidence, and that really changes like the type of company you are and the type of service you're able to provide if your staff doesn't have confidence in you as a leader.
Yes, your staff is definitely just an extension of you, and ultimately most of their errors or mistakes are going to fall back on your shoulders, or they should. You should be taking responsibility for those. If a planner called me up and said something happened, like there's no way in the world I would say, well, that staff member wasn't properly trained, or this or that happened with the staff member. Like I would certainly take full responsibility for that and try to make it right in the best way that I could, and obviously deal with my staff member on the side later. But that wouldn't even be part of the discussion with the planner as well. I wouldn't say I'll discipline them or take care of it. I would address it as I made the mistake, because we have to take ownership as being an owner.
Right. And the communication side is huge too. When you're dealing with things like that, where maybe a staff member dropped the ball on something, a client calls you and complains. I mean, you being able to professionally handle that client and manage the complaint is a huge part of it too. I hear a lot of people who get very defensive, like, I can't believe this person expected this from, complained about this, complained about that. And you as the owner, you are the one who determines like what your client sees you as. And if you're sitting there being defensive and defending your staff, or defending why you did something that you did that the client is not happy with, I just don't feel like you're thinking of the bigger picture of your company's reputation. That one client is not just one client. It could be several leads that you have from this one client that now, in their eyes, they see you as not taking responsibility. If you drop the ball, take ownership. Don't sit there and be. I see a lot of people who want to argue with their clients, and it's not. I don't feel like that's appropriate. Whether you have a difference of opinion or not, communication is a big part of being good at what you do and being the company that you strive to be. And there's moments where you drop the ball, and how you handle it really shows if you're more of an owner, or if you have that employee mentality. I see a lot of people who blame everybody else. Oh, the florist did this, the DJ took forever to load in. And, you as an owner, you should have these things factored in, like logistics of events. Like, you should know that if you're showing up to a venue, if they only have one service elevator, there's a high possibility that everybody's going to fight for that elevator to get up to, the top floor. So you as the owner should be factoring in like early load in, and alternatives for, getting yourself to where you need to be at the time that you need to be at, versus, blaming everybody else.
Yeah. And circling back to one of my earlier examples, just putting the business first, like the lasting effects of something like that. For the example of, and it's something that I see pretty frequently, of someone saying I was put in the back room and they're celebrating the fact that they're saving money on prints and they're getting paid to not do anything. And that certainly is like the mentality of an employee going to work and not having to do anything. But putting the company first, and how that affects the company in the long run, as you as a professional should be letting the client know that that's not the best place for the photo booth. The photo booth needs to be somewhere where there's higher traffic, and explain why that room is in it. And maybe that room is the only place that there is available. And that's unfortunate, but sometimes that happens. And now what's going to happen is someone's going to later say, hey, you had a photo booth for your wedding. How did that turn out? And going to say like, we didn't really get very many photos, so I don't
Nobody
know.
knew we were there.
Yeah. So it's not going to help your company, and maybe someone will never ask, but it's never going to help your company, as opposed to if you're going out and grabbing people and letting them know the photo booth is free, or going to a table and saying, hey, it's your table's turn at the photo booth. And, that whole table goes and follows you over to the photo booth, and creating that fun environment, then that's the feedback that's going to happen. And if someone else is getting married, like sometimes people will say, I didn't even know there was a photo booth here. And that should, like, if someone doesn't know a photo booth was there, then you're certainly acting like an employee and not an owner. And the same things, I'll see someone getting angry because the client provided their own album and wants you to put it together, and they're upset because they didn't pay for it. And again, I feel like that also is in the realm of the employee mentality. As an owner, if you're thinking about what is best for the business as a whole, people are always so angry at brides when they do this, but like maybe there's a few malicious brides out there, but for the most brides, like, they're not being malicious. They don't know. They've never hired a photo booth before. They just saw an album at Michael's that they like, and they brought it and didn't think it would be a big deal. And now you're making it a big deal. And that's what they're going to remember you for. So a lot of times people will say, well, I'm just going to put it on a table. And, if customers, their guests put something in it, that's on them because they didn't pay for it. But all those guests that come, they don't know the scenario. They don't know that the bride just brought that album and she didn't pay for it. All they see is a shitty album not being put together that they associate with your company. And ultimately, they're going to think that that is your album, and that's how you put albums together. So anytime that happens to us, we definitely take over the album. We make sure it turns out great because everyone that sees us are going to associate that album with us. If it was something that happened all the time, then maybe we'd do something to resolve that or fix it. But it happens so rare. But I see it posted in the forums all the time, specifically with albums,
it happens
and I don't know.
Yeah, it happens to us too. We for the longest time before COVID, I actually started incorporating albums into our packages because it was happening so frequently. We couldn't absorb the costs because it was happening almost at every single event that we were doing. So my solution was, we're just going to build it into the cost of the photo booth, where you didn't have to sit there and question, okay, are we going to help them with this book or not? After COVID, because of all the things that came up with like germs and stuff like that, we actually moved away from albums. So now we're starting to see every so often, it's very, very rare, every so often a bride will put out a book. And I struggled with this myself because I'm in the same camp as you, Jason. Like, people don't know that that's not associated with us. They don't know that the bride dropped the album without letting us know. But I also don't want it to be, because again, what you do with this client, when their friends reach out to them, they're going to tell their friends, okay, we dropped the album and they just went ahead and serviced it, so don't book the album. So I had to think about that as a bigger picture, because a lot of our clients aren't, they're not leads that we find online. A lot of them is just word of mouth and referral base. So for me, it was really hard decision to be like, okay, we're going to help them with their album in terms of like, we're going to make sure that we direct clients over there. We're going to make sure the pens and the book is kept neat. But we really had to step away from actually, because when we manage a book, we actually, designate where they sign. We keep everything organized. We tape everything. We glue the strips on, or the 4x6 on really neat. But we couldn't manage it because we didn't want it to be where the reputation and the referrals that come in are like, okay, well, they told me that you managed their book for free. And that's something that I struggled with the decision with. And we haven't had any issues with clients. I mean, our clients have been very happy with the fact that, and it's not just making that decision, but making sure that you have set that expectation for your client. So if we show up and the client dropped the album, we let the planner know, we let the client know, this is not a service that we booked, but we're going to help at least direct guests to make sure that they, we're going to encourage them to leave a message and drop their print there. So it's still somewhat managed by us. It's just we're not actually touching the book and organizing it ourselves completely.
Sure.
But
And
I think your attitude is a huge part of it. Like getting upset and offended is that's the bigger issue that I see with people that have the mentality of an employee where they get upset and there's no reservation about how upset they are about having to manage a book. And really, it doesn't take any much more effort, but setting that expectation with your client, with your planner, I think as long as you're open and you're direct with them, there shouldn't be any issue with that.
I agree. And when we book albums, we have a second person on site that is solely dedicated to that album as well. So
Yes.
we're obviously not delivering the same level of service when we're helping people complete the album, but we do as best as we can without sacrificing the service at the photo booth.
Right.
But I like you mentioned that you saw that frequently. Like we don't. We're all have different markets and different clients, and it's always interesting to me to see how things affect people differently. And the fact that you saw that often enough to build that into your packages is interesting, but more is a perfect example of seeing a problem and addressing it or approaching it as a business owner, finding that solution.
Exactly.
That building it into a package completely eliminates the problem. And that's something as an owner that you need to be able to see, recognize the problem and find a solution for it.
Yeah, take the initiative. I mean, don't let your clients be the ones in control of making that decision. The memory book comes up, but I think more common is the idle time and early arrival. That one is probably that one comes up more frequent, and I see a lot of people who always ask, like, I told my client that, we're coming an hour early, and if you want us earlier, you have to pay for idle time. And if you give your client that option, nobody's going to want to pay for idle time. Nobody wants that, because in their mind, they don't think that you need to be there early because they don't understand the logistics. I mean, people get married one time. This is probably their first time they're renting that photo booth. They don't know how much time it takes for you to build your backdrop. They don't know how messy the whole setup, aspect of it is. So when you ask them, are you okay with us setting up during your banquet? Of course they're going to say yes, because they don't want to spend that extra, however much you're charging for idle time, because they have a whole budget in mind, and every dollar that they have to spend extra is less dollars they have on the rest of their event. Of course, they're going to tell you they don't need idle time. You have to know what it takes for you to deliver the services that you deliver. So, if you're at a venue and you have to go through security, you have to go through loading docks, you have to go through security checks, you have to build in your idle time, your early arrival with that in mind. I think one of the ones that I always bring up is SoFi Stadium and Malibu venues out here in LA. I mean, you're in open field. There's no way that you can come an hour before their event, because the open field, they're having a ceremony. You can't load in with all your gear, treading through the grass, setting up without everybody noticing you're in the corner, and that's the thing that I make sure I communicate with my brides. And that's, you have to be the expert at what you do. That's what makes you an owner versus an employee.
Yeah, be the professional. Wear that hat.
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard to have that conversation with a bride who already, especially when you have a bride who already thinks you're expensive, but I struggle, like, not so much on that side with the event side. I struggle more with, like, taking on the responsibilities on the back end. Like, I know that's your strength, Jason, and I look up to you so much for it, but I cannot let go of, like, the back end stuff. Like, my team is awesome for live events, but it's hard for me to let control of the back end, the sales, the emails, the client communication. And I feel in that aspect, I have an employee mentality.
Well, no, that's a very owner mentality. It's very hard to release those things because, I mean, first of all, that no one's going to care about your business as much as you do. So you know right away. And it's the same thing when you hire your first person to work an event. It's the same thing as when you hire your first person to do sales. The quality is going to drop some percentage. So you've got to just decide, like, 20% less quality delivery in our events will happen when I hire this person. So we won't be as good as a company, but we'll be a bigger company. You just kind of have to balance that out. So in my case, I'm not the best salesperson on the phone, and I'm not the best at networking events. In fact, I'm really awful at networking events. So it was much easier for me because it was just a matter of recognizing that someone could do it better than I can, and that made it very easy to hire somebody for that role. And right now, our primary salesperson is Shannon, and she does it fantastically.
She's
as far as
awesome.
networking and things. Like she's really approachable.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah, she is phenomenal. And if she goes to a networking event, like everybody will know her name before she leaves, and it's not because she's walking around just handing out cards. She like makes a real connection with everybody, and it's just not something that you could teach somebody. It comes natural to her. She's just naturally very, very, she wants to know about everybody, and that's the kind of person that you need for a salesperson. And that's not me, because like I hate to say it, but like I don't care about most people. Like when I'm in the grocery line and someone starts talking to me, I don't understand why they think that I want to know about whatever they're talking about. Like these things aren't interesting to me. If you want to talk about, spreadsheets or something, then let's chat. But I don't want to hear about how your kid missed the bus this morning. I don't know you or your kid, and it's just so weird to me. Like so people are different.
Yeah,
people are different. But if somebody approached Shannon in the grocery store and told her about her kid missing the bus, they would be going to coffee afterwards.
They'd be her bestie by the end of the day. Yeah.
So people are different, and it's important to recognize that. And if you're not really great at sales, then it's really important that you recognize that and put someone in that position. The same thing with like taxes. Like I took an accounting class, and I'm pretty good with QuickBooks and entering things in, but I'm very poor at prioritizing my time and doing it in a timely manner. So essentially, like at the end of the year, my wife would say, "Are you going to be ready for taxes this year?" And I'd say, "Yeah, clear out my calendar for the next 2 weeks, because I've got to enter the entire year's worth of transactions into QuickBooks and categorize them and try and remember what everything is," because I would always put it off. And that was a very weak point for me. And I didn't want to hire a bookkeeper. Unfortunately, my wife is also very good at bookkeeping and took a bookkeeping class as well. So it was an easy fit to put my wife into that position, and then my wife handles all our books, and everything is done.
That's awesome.
Every day. So it's just important to put people into roles that they're best suited. And it's another thing. Like I see so many people like say they're going to fire someone showed up late, and everyone in the comments is like, "Get rid of them. We get rid of anyone that shows up late," or whatever. Like when you find someone that has a good skill, like you really need to learn how to curate that and keep that around. Like it is so hard to find good employees. Like certainly if I hire them and they come their first couple days late, like we're going to get rid of them. We're not going to mess around with that. But if one of the staff members that we've had for, a period of time in it and is great with guests come late, what happened? Listen to them. Maybe there's a good reason that they came late. Have backup systems in place to take care of them coming late. Like if they come late, fortunately, we're in a position where we have someone on site every event. Like people come to our office to pick up the gear before they go to an event. If someone doesn't show up, we have someone there waiting to go. And that's just the way that we've built our system to make sure that no event ever starts late, because things happen. Maybe someone, I hate to think of anyone calling in sick, but maybe someone got COVID or is puking, or maybe someone got in a car accident on the way to work. And, of course we sympathize with that, but we also need to have someone loading up the gear and heading out to our event, because we need to make sure that we uphold our side of the bargain when we booked an event.
All those have happened to me. I've experienced all of those. Car crash. Someone had gotten into an accident. Someone had COVID during that time where you had to get tested for events and things like that. And, I had to make that decision. It was not an easy one, but I had to make a decision where, our events are so far that we have to send 2 people. We don't have the luxury. And that's just, the reality of the fact that we're based, 45 minutes away from LA. And in traffic, it's not 45 minutes. In traffic, it could be 2 to 3 hours for us to be able to send someone over there to the LA area where most of our events are. So I made the decision, we have to send 2 people. And, if one person doesn't show up, the other person can still function. They can still operate.
And I used to do it the same way. I used to have 2 people on every event for that exact reason. And that's how I started having we call them support. We have a support person now, and essentially they're at our office. So if someone doesn't show up at our office, it doesn't matter if something's 2 hours away, because their meet time was at a time that would give them plenty of time to get to that spot 2 hours away. So if they don't show up, that person is there, they're dressed ready to go to the show or to the event, so they can leave right away. So instead of paying 2 people to be at every event, because like how often does somebody call in or something like that? I would hope that it's less.
So rare.
Yeah, it's very rare. So this one person, if I have one event, is the exact same cost of having 2 people on that event, because there's someone here and there's someone going to the event. But as soon as you have 2 events, that second person is covering. Now you're paying for 3 people instead of 4 people. When you have 4 events, now you're paying for 5 people instead of 8 people. And now that one person can be on site at the office and take support calls. If something's forgot, they can run it out. So it adds a second layer of security for everything. In addition to if it's someone calls in, she's able to head out right, within minutes of them calling in. Or if they just don't show up, we'll wait 20 minutes and then she's in the car and she's going. So it's a lot easier to have that one person at the office. It's a lot, it saves a lot of money having that one person at the office as opposed to having 2 people on every event. And it offers a much higher level of tech support for all those people, having someone to call and troubleshoot things that's not you. It lets you like go to a movie when there's events and whatnot. So we always have that person, even if there's only one event. And then if once we hit 6 events, we have a second person that just shows up, because obviously if someone calls in and that person has to go and we have 6 events, we're probably going to have some troubleshooting and we need someone still in the office. So we have someone that is, we call it on call. They come in and just hang out, and we'll have them organize or clean stuff up around the office. And essentially they're there for like 2 hours until everyone shows up for their event. And once everyone's gone, they just leave. And I can't remember offhand what we pay them for that. But once we hit 6 events, we have that second person show up. Otherwise, under 6 events, we have that one person on tech support during all our events. And it's a very good selling point also when we're talking to people about why we're better. Like, obviously, everyone's scared of something happening during their wedding, and you're very easy can say, like, it's technology, something will go wrong. Like there's maybe not for your wedding, but for the next wedding, like cameras die, computers die, like these things just happen. You have a computer at home. How reliable is it? It's the question is not whether something will go wrong, it's how it's handled and if you'll know about it. And that's why for every event we have live tech support during the events. So if something happens, they can call in and we can remote into the computers. We can fix it. If a camera breaks, we have that on site to replace. If the second one breaks, we've got someone at the office that can just drive that out, and giving that layer of that security and making someone feel confident about your ability to perform an event is just a really strong selling point that a lot of companies don't offer or can't offer.
I think though, it shouldn't be a question of if you can offer it or not. It should be, I feel like all companies should have backup, whether you're starting new or if you've been doing this for a long time. You should have tech support as well, because this is a very technical job that we do. You have the photography side and then you have the electronic side. Those are 2 totally different, very advanced things as well. I don't think there's any reason why you shouldn't even be booking events if you don't have backup cameras. Even if you can't afford how much are cameras now? Like $350 or something like that.
Yeah,
like if you can't afford a backup.
We have a save search on Facebook Marketplace for cameras. Like anytime we see, we use the T6 in most of our booth. So anytime we see one posted for like $250, like we don't care if it's used, because if it's a backup, it just has to make it through that event, So
Yeah.
we just always are watching Facebook Marketplace for used gear. Just save a search and
But
it'll
there,
pop up.
yeah, and exactly what you said. It's not a question of how reliable it is, because 98% of the events that you do, you're going to have no issues. Your printer's going to work, your camera's going to work, but all it takes is that one event. And the funny thing is, you could have used that same photo booth, that same equipment the entire week, 6 other times before you, and your event happens to be the one where, a cable, and that's the thing, like cables are the most, they're the small components, like your cables, your hot shoe adapter. Those are the things that are going to go quickest, and those are the cheapest to have as backup. So you as an owner need to make the decision. Like, you have to realize that you cannot just tell a client, I'm sorry, our camera broke. We're going to break down our photo booth in the middle of your wedding because our camera broke. Like, you as a professional have to realize that you have to have these systems in place. You have to have backup plans in place, not just for just staffing, but your photo booth, your components, your camera. If you don't have backup, you have to have some friends around you. I mean, that's the thing that's great about our industry, is there's so many people around you that can help you. I know I've had people that, and it's been the same with myself too, where whatever luck you have, that one time that you don't bring that one, sync cable is the one time you need it. And the awesome thing is that, providers around you, if you put out that call, people will come to your help, but you don't want that to be how you handle all of your issues.
Yeah,
it should be just one of those. Yeah. It should just be one of those, like, bag. Oh my God, like the one time that you forget your backup equipment and you need it, it should be just like a horrible, bad luck type of day. That shouldn't be your plan. That shouldn't be your backup plan for equipment that goes down every single event. Like, I know it's happened to me where, we forgot the backup, the extra camera batteries or whatnot. And, people have helped me, but it's not how I run my business, where I'm relying on everything just working. We have backup cameras, backup components, backup flashes and printers at every event, unless it's Christmas. I mean, there's no way that we can stock enough. Yeah,
every Christmas piece of backup equipment is makeshift booths.
Everything. Yeah, everything is out.
I agree. And being in Vegas, so many like national providers are here several times per year because it's hard to have as much backup equipment when you're traveling, and it's easy to forget things when you're traveling. So we get several calls per year of people that are just in town for an event. In fact, like I had never met Terrence. What's Terrence's last name?
Snow.
Yeah, Terrence. I had never met Terrence Snow before. We've both been in the industry for a long time, and we both ended up on this booth cruise together this year.
That's the first
he introduced him. Too. Oh, nice. And he introduced himself, and in his introduction, he thanked me for saving his ass a couple times because because his team would be in Vegas and their printer would stop working, or something. Yeah. I think one time he came and they didn't have the paper holder in the printer or something like that. I can't remember what it was. That may have been somebody else. But on a couple different occasions, he would just email and be like, "Hey, I've got a team in Vegas, and this is happening. Sometimes we'll send somebody out." It wasn't to one of his events, but someone else reached out and said, "Hey, I have this event and one of our people didn't show up. Do you have any spare staff?" Oh. So we're able to help a lot of those people, unfortunately.
Support.
And a lot of people are
traveling gigs are hard.
Yeah. So it's good to know those people, especially like wherever you're going, know who's willing to help. And we have a competitor here that we're not very friendly with each other, but there was a time that someone booked us and wanted those paper like cardstock frames. And we didn't have any, and we didn't have time to order any because it was like a 2-day booking or something. And, you have to find a way to make it work. So we reached out to this company that we're not friendly with, and we're like, "Hey, I know that you do these a lot because I see that you do them at wedding shows. I'm sure you have them in stock. like, what will you sell these to me for? And even though we're not really friendly, this guy was like, come pick them up. I won't charge you for anything. I'm sure I'll need something someday.
That's awesome.
And it's great. And,
Yeah.
you know, during the
glad you brought
paper
that up.
fiasco of whatever year that was, they ran out of paper, and we had like a pallet and a half of paper because we keep such a huge
Oh my
stock.
gosh.
And we would have never
Yeah.
like given up paper if they hadn't done this for us in the past and saved us. So we for a minute, like we ultimately got to a point where I'm pretty sure we were the only company in Vegas that had paper, but we were able
That's
to help them out. And
yeah,
But-
that's awesome. I think that's a big. I love that you brought that up, because I feel like there's a whole thing where people feel some kind of way reaching out, you know, whether you're friendly or not. There's like a lot of reservation of just reaching out to other companies, and you know, there's going to be a moment where you need help. There's going to be a moment they need help. You know what I mean? So I feel that's something that you have to overcome for your success and for theirs, because traveling, a lot of us are moving more towards traveling, you know, even if you don't go too far. Even like we travel to NorCal for events, and, you know, we're pretty prepared when we do events here in LA. But when you start factoring in flying or driving, I mean, things get lost. It's not something that purposely happens, but, you know, being able to support others when you need help, someone will come in and step up and support you. And not having any kind of feelings about that is pretty important. I mean, because it's such a small industry and we all rely on each other.
Especially if you're traveling, like when we're going to like Florida or something, we can't bring backup printers. Like we just need to know who's in that area that we can reach out to in an emergency. We went to Georgia, to Atlanta, and you know, there's other things that like you can't really travel with. You can, I guess, go to Home Depot and buy some stuff, but you know, I reached out to Monica, who's in Atlanta, and she helped me out with a cart because, you know, I didn't want to fly with a rock and roller and back up. And actually, I think she brought a printer because I didn't have a printer case at the time, or I didn't want to pay for the extra baggage or something. I can't remember what it was, but I think she let us use one of her printers and a print server. And she ended up coming and just helping on that event as well. So, you know, if you need that extra staff, it's great to not just have to reach out to BAs, but say, hey, there's a photo booth company that can come and help. And you know that they know the equipment, they know how to interact with guests. And she came out and helped us do a Vogue for I think that company, that event was for BIC or something like that. But
that's, you know, so awesome.
It's good to have that network of people, you know, and yeah, so this has kind of turned into a employee versus owner and backup equipment. That's okay. We've got a double topic.
You know what though? It's related.
It is related.
It's related. Yeah, having like strong relationships is part of like an ownership mentality. When I was first starting, I remember I was more in the camp of everybody was your competition, you know? So it was like, you know, any other photo booth company I didn't want anything to do with, because I figured like, you know, we're all selling to the same client. And then when you start realizing that there's different pools of clients, and then also that they don't have to be your competition, they can actually be your partners. That's a big step as an owner, to be able to realize like together you can both thrive and do well, because there's so much business in our industry. It doesn't have to be a competition type of mentality. That took me some years, and I feel like that's part of like an owner mentality as well. Just realizing that, you know, you don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a competition with providers around you. You know, so much business for all of us, and we all kind of market to different clientele. But having that support is huge.
Yeah, support, backup. Like we honestly, we don't have a backup like computer on site. I don't know what I would do if a service pro died. I guess assuming we don't have any other.
It's happened to me.
Yeah, and even if it did, like it would not be easy to replace. Like it would take half the event to pull our booth apart and put a new Surface Pro in. So if it happened right now, what we would do is the person that's tech support would just run another booth or another head to our booth out there, and I think the problem would be solved within probably 30 minutes because fortunately Vegas is very small and everything's pretty close. I don't think it would happen during an event. If a surface died, I would expect it to happen at the beginning when you're turning things on. So I think we would still start on time and whatnot because we get there so early. And as well, I know that you have backup printers on site because everything's so far away. But again, Vegas, everything's so close that we don't have backup printers on site. We have had printers that needed to be replaced on 3 different occasions. And all 3, just like computer, they all happened before the event started when we were setting up. Something didn't work and we were able to run a printer out and the client never knew because we're able to do that before the event starts, because everything's so close. Other than that, though, we have backups of everything. And like you hit on, like, if you can't afford backups, like, you should find a way to afford backups, even if it's used equipment. And we still use used equipment as backups. But the most important things, like every single member of our staff knows to change a hot shoe, not because we make it important that they know, but because they've all done it a couple times. Like hot shoes die all the time. Have hot shoes in your bag. If something's not working, well, 99% of the time you just need to reset your computer. But if you've done that, like 90% of the time, it's a cable. So have backup cables. Like the cheapest things are the things you need to replace a lot of the time. So make sure, like, there's no reason to go home over a bad cable or a bad hot shoe. Like have those very basic essentials ready to go, and some very basic tools that you don't ever realize that you'll need. Just like a screwdriver and needle nose pliers. And those things are good because a lot of times someone will come around and be like, hey, do you have needle nose pliers by chance? And being able to help other vendors, helps to build those relationships. Otherwise, for backups, like I mentioned, like we have backup staff ready to go. Software, we do have backup software on hand, but unless it's like a big event, like for weddings, we don't have the events set up in different softwares. We would have to reset it up. But again, I can't really see that happening during an event. It would happen prior, and we'd have plenty of time to have that set up remotely. Unless we didn't have internet, couldn't get in, then we'd have to set up on a kiosk here and run it out. But fortunately, like besides the printer, we've never had to run things out before. Most equipment is pretty solid. Even the printers are really solid. Like we put them through hell. And the ones...
Hey, we've had people knock over the printer because they get so excited in the photo booth. So we have stories. I've had enough things that have needed to be replaced that I don't even mess around except during the holidays. But we've run like a PC out. I had 2 PCs that failed. Again, it's never during the event. It's always during setup. I had one where I think the Surface Pro 7s were not that reliable. We had a few fail. One, the touch screen failed right before the event during setup, and I was testing it maybe 3 or 4 hours prior to that. No inclination, no clues that the touch was going to fail. Nothing happened for the touch to fail. It just failed. I mean, I think I was testing it at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I showed up on site at 6:30 or 7, and the touch didn't work. And that's the thing, like, as an owner, you have to make sure that you're talking about backup software. Like, it's not just hardware, but software. If anything like that happens, you have to be able to know, because most of us don't have a whole second, exactly what you said. We don't have a whole second software that we set up for that event as backup. That would take way too much time for us to be able to manage for our events. So knowing, like, you as an owner researching what software, I always hear people asking, like, what's the best software? What's the easiest software? What's the cheapest software? Knowing what's out there, what software is capable of what type of workflow, capabilities, things like that, how to set up. That's a huge thing, because if you have, like what happened to me, where a touch screen failed, and, if you have 5-10 minutes to set it up, knowing what's out there that you can quickly set up can literally save your event, and you might not use that software every single day, but the fact that you researched all the software beforehand, all the workflows you've tested beforehand, you're going to be prepared. And I think that's the biggest part of being an owner, being prepared. If you're prepared, it's easy for you to take ownership of anything that happens. If something fails, you already know, okay, this failed. This is the backup plan that we have. This is the backup software we have. We're going to hurry up and set it up. That's the thing. if you don't know how to set up backup software, how the heck can you save your staff if you're not working the event? I mean, most photo booth owners are single operators and they run their events. Not everybody is like that. If you're one of the owners where you send out a team, if you don't know the software, how can you ask your team to set up something back, on the fly, last minute? We were talking about like learning Photoshop earlier. I was forced to learn Photoshop. I never knew how to use Photoshop. I had to learn step by step. And the reason was because I had a client. We started moving more towards corporate events, and corporate, they make very last minute changes, decisions. Sometimes it's moving a logo 2 pixels over, but it's a huge deal to them. And you just can't, I love the designers in our industry that work crazy hours to get us the things that we need last minute. But there's moments where you have to be the one that, if you have to pull up Canva, if you have to learn Photoshop, sometimes you just have to figure out, you have to do what you have to do to find a solution to the issue. If they need that logo moved over 2 pixels, and believe me, I've had clients that ask me to keep moving that logo 2 pixels until it's 6 pixels over. You have to take the initiative and learn how to use Photoshop so that you're not in a jam where you're telling your client, I can't help you. That should never be your answer to your client. If
you're a solo op, those things are still important. Obviously, you're not going to have the tech support to call, but like we've hit on so many times, but we need to, because it's important, like build that army of people. Because when I was a solo op, I got to an event and a name was spelt wrong, and I had to reach out to someone that could do Photoshop and change that for me on the fly and send that back to me so I could fix my template. Because I did have Photoshop on that computer actually, but Surface Pro and touchscreens and Photoshop just doesn't work. So I think that was Mitch again that helped me out with that.
You could, Jason, you could turn on touchpad now though. There's like a touchpad function that you can work. Oh,
really? That helps with Photoshop? But we have never on a Surface Pro, but we did have our mirror once. I got to an event and the touchscreen didn't work.
Oh.
And we didn't have another mirror to run out, obviously. Well, not obviously, some people do. But we just had the keyboard in our hand the entire time. And when people came up, people don't know that they're supposed to touch it if you don't tell them. Apparently, you would think that it's intuitive, but we basically just would tell people, stand right there, are you ready? And then we'd hit the space bar on the keyboard.
Yeah,
it's the little tiny like Raspberry Pi keyboards, and the session would start. And then when they needed to enter their phone number, we would just hand them the keypad, and they would just enter it on the little keyboard, and nobody knew any different, or at least they didn't seem to. And the event went off well, and I think that probably would have been a working solution for your Surface Pro as well. I assume a keyboard would have worked. I don't know, but even if you're a solo op, there's a lot of things you can do, and the key thing is obviously knowing your equipment and knowing your software. I'm not suggesting that you should be in an event and hit tech support or reach out to people asking how to fix the focus on your camera. These basic things you should know before you get into the business, but having a group of people around you that can help you is very important. And now I'm going to have like 100 people. Mitch is going to call and be like, quit telling people to send me their problems.
Well, I mean, there's a whole times. There's a whole service though that you can sign up for. You can do pay per call, or you can do like a whole subscription, monthly. And
never looked into it, but I've seen it, like photoboothsupport.com or something like that. Are you familiar with it?
I used to be on their support team because I used to help. I used to help with the support calls that would come in, and it's. Sometimes it's things that you don't even expect, like a mouse that goes bad, or someone.
Let's get the dirt. What's the biggest support cost?
There's no dirt. It's just what we do is very technical, and even if you have team members that are great at what they do, they have strengths. There's certain people who have the strength of being very engaging, very fun, very great with people, but the tech side of it is not their strength. And there's other people who have the strength of being tech savvy, but maybe they're not as social. And then you have the people, that are amazing with both. But you don't have to sacrifice someone who's amazing that doesn't have tech abilities if you have you just sign up for the support. If they need help, they can call into support. They help 24 hours a day. They help with all the different software, and he's great, Greg. But yeah, I helped him for a few months. It was, but I was.
I don't know if I've met him before. I'll have to make a point to meet him. He sounds like a good person to have on the show.
Yeah, yes.
Because definitely, if you're a solo op, like that sounds like an excellent solution. Like it sounds like a mandatory solution. Really, like you should have some kind of support backup.
Because the reality is not everybody that runs a photo booth company is tech savvy. Maybe they're just business savvy. So making sure that you have that in place for your company is it's going to really help you be successful. If you have, if you're not tech savvy, have a support service, to help your team members. Same thing with the photography side. Like, there's a lot of people who sit there and say, I'm too busy. I'm too busy to learn photography. You don't need photography. And again, that's more of like an employee mentality where when something comes up, then you're calling around asking other people why your photos are turning out white or why your photos are turning out black. You as the owner, I just don't understand the mentality of how we run a photo booth company, but you don't understand that you need to know photography. I don't really understand that concept.
Even just the basics.
I get a lot of,
just even very, you don't have basics.
Yeah, you don't have to be a professional photographer. You just need photography 101. And I can tell you, I was a self-taught photographer. So when I started photo boothing, it really made my job, besides the technical side of everything that is already a lot. If you don't know the photography side on top of that, it really just makes your job and your career in the industry really, really challenging, because it's unnecessary to be so stressed out for something that probably, I don't know, Jason, like 30 minutes of YouTube, like a 30-minute tutorial on YouTube, you can understand very, very core concepts of basic photography, and that'll save you so much heartache. And taking that initiative to like understand and realize that that's a huge part of what we do, and learning that right off the bat, versus being on site saying I've never experienced this problem before. That's because sometimes you're at a venue where there's tons of light. Your settings are going to be different than when you're in an environment where all the lights are turned off. Of course, it's going to be different. There's nothing wrong with your photo booth. It's the fact that you didn't take the initiative to learn basic core concepts of photography settings and lighting. Usually it's just like turning the dial over move the dial over four, to the left or to the right, and your whole issue is solved. But because you don't take the initiative to learn basic photography, you're, sweating bullets on site and praying that someone answers you online.
On the forums, on Facebook, what's the best camera settings to use? And people can and do give like basic starting points that will get you through a lot of events. But if you just set that and forget it and you get to an event that you're outside, or you have light coming through a window, or the DJ lights are close to your booth, like you need to know quickly how to adjust those. And it's not difficult to fix all of the problems that I just said, but you need to know very basic photography to be able to do it.
Yeah, take that initiative and invest in yourself and your business. I feel like it's your company, and you shouldn't be relying on other people to bail you out because you're not prepared as an owner. If you're an employee, that's a whole different thing, If you're an employee, you show up to work, you ask someone for help. That's the boss's job, is to help you. But if you are the boss, you should be looking for the answers yourself and being prepared. Versus, I don't think that it should be you relying on other photo booth owners who also have events, who also have their own, staff and events and employees and jobs that they have to do. They can't drop what they're doing to save you because you're not prepared for your own delivery.
Yeah. And a lot of the things that you said, you mentioned a 30-minute YouTube, like the tools are there and they're free. You just have to use them. Take the time. Like it doesn't take a lot of time. By the time this show airs, my reveal that the podcast is back video would have already been on Facebook and whatnot. So a few people would have seen it. I'm not spoiling anything, but I had a vision that I wanted to create, and it's not all that great. I'll be honest, but I have never used Premiere before, and I couldn't find anything that all the video editing tools I've always used have been like TikTok focused, like things that you do on your phone, so I can post something to social media. But I couldn't accomplish what I wanted to with those tools. So somebody mentioned, like, why don't you just use Premiere? Like, everybody knows Premiere. I've never had or opened or looked at Premiere before, but I downloaded Premiere. I got a subscription. I just, every time I tried to do something and I couldn't do it, I just popped over to YouTube, and each question was resolved with a video that was less than 90 seconds, and I would go back and I would accomplish what I was trying to do. And so I made that video, having zero experience with Premiere. It was the first time that I opened it. It took me a couple hours. It's a 30-second clip, so it was kind of time consuming, but I got what I wanted, not as polished and as nice as I wanted, I guess, but I'd never used it before, and it was good enough to deliver the message that I wanted to deliver.
That's impressive, though. That's impressive, because I tried Premiere. I tried to learn Premiere, and it was overwhelming for me. I think that's impressive, Jason. But you gotta do what you gotta do. That's the whole thing. Like, if there's a problem, you as an owner have to find the solution. Either you pay someone to do it, or you sit there and you learn to do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Pay someone to do it, or figure it out yourself. The ultimate, though, is recognizing the problem and finding a way to address it, and like taking an inventory of problems that may have come up and looking at how you addressed it, like on the fly, and if that was the best way, and if there's other solutions. We had a staff member forget an umbrella once, so the next day after that weekend's events, of course we ran the umbrella out and it was fine, but we sat down and said, okay, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? And it's just a matter of looking at the issues that happened during that weekend and finding the best way to make sure it never happens again, and also a game plan in case it does happen again. And for us, we staged everything. So our tech support person also stages all the equipment for someone to come and pick up, and that person basically just assumes that everything's there, and sometimes things are forgotten. So we just put together a double checklist on our packing sheet. There's 2 rows of check marks now, and when the person stages the event, they go down and they mark a check mark next to every single item that they set there, and then when the person comes to pick up, they're responsible for checking the second box to make sure that it went into their car, and if it wasn't there, then that first person has to say why there's a check mark next to the umbrella when the umbrella wasn't staged. And if they make it to an event and 2 people check those check boxes and there's not an umbrella there, then there's 2 people that have to explain why they checked the check box that something was present that wasn't present. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened since we put that double check mark practice into practice. But that is exactly how we approached it. It happened. It wasn't something big, but still we take an inventory of any issues that happened during the weekend. We look at them and decide what's the best solution in case this happens again, and also what's the best solution to make sure it doesn't happen again. And then we immediately put those into practice. So it's a matter of taking that awesome inventory of any problems, consider how they were resolved on site, and taking it head on like an owner should, and talking to people, getting feedback, and basically taking responsibility for the issue and finding the best way to resolve it.
Yeah, I love that you didn't target the employee and blame the employee for not having the umbrella.
Oh no.
Just recognizing
shit
that
happens,
it's something
man.
in this. Yeah, but not everybody has that viewpoint. Like, some people like to blame the staff for things that go wrong, and it's like, you got to look at how you have your systems and reevaluate how you're doing things so that you can avoid stuff like that, versus just blaming the one person for whatever.
Yeah, and it was an office staff that this happened to, so they happened to be in the office and were able to go over this process with me. And when I sat them down, you're right, they did think they were in trouble, but I told them, no, like, this is the process that I typically go through by myself when someone forgets something, but since you're here and you're in the office, you're going to go through it with me. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
What can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? And, and it's important, I guess, that they know those processes, just because, like you mentioned much earlier, people, they look up to you. You have to lead by example. If you're going to be an owner, you need to have your staff recognize you as that person of authority and that owner to look up to.
That leads. Yeah.
Anyway, so
I think it's
moving.
easy to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think it's really easy to put the blame elsewhere. I think it's harder to step up and try to find solutions. Like, I know one situation that came up where we showed up at an event and timelines change. You have events where because the event runs late and they get delayed, we get delayed, right? And I've had this, I just one event that stood out in my mind is where they had a conference and they were in a conference room and we're supposed to load in and set up at a certain time, like 4:00, and they were backed up till like 6. So the planner is like, oh, you guys just sit out here, hang out here. When the conference is done, we're running late. When the conference is done, you guys move in and set up. And like, my team had the mentality like, okay, the planner says, let's sit and wait. We're just going to hang out and chill. Like, that's very employee mentality. And me as the owner, I'm like, okay, there's no way, because you have to think, as soon as they come out, that gives us they're already running behind schedule. So that shortens our window. And when they come out, it's very likely that they're going to move straight into an open event where we're needing the photo booth to pretty much be ready to go as soon as they open those doors. So I asked my team, you know what, we cannot sit there and chill. You guys, if you can't set up where you're set up, go hide in a corner, go to the street, wherever you have to go and set up, and it's a matter of like doing what you have to do so that you can deliver the job you have to deliver. Like, sometimes you can't, if the planner tells you to hang out, you have to know as a professional, you cannot just hang out. Like, you have to go set up anywhere. Like, if you have to hide it, and we've done that, because the type of events we do, sometimes we cannot set up because they're moving spaces, there's guests moving around, whatnot. But you find a way to find a corner. The other day, one of my guys, because of the rain, the guests were running late to the party. He had to set up on the sidewalk, on the street, on the side, because we can't just sit around waiting for when we get the okay from a planner. You have to be proactive and, be ready, so that, because when it comes down to it, the planner is not the one who's going to be blamed if you're not on time. They don't care whatever delays happen that limit you from, being ready.
And you can't blame it on the planner. Like, the last thing you want to do is blame something on a planner.
You definitely cannot blame it on the planner. But I'm just saying, like,
blacklisted.
The end of the day, nobody cares if the event is running late. Nobody cares that there's no event, there's no space for you to set up. The only thing that they see is you as the photo booth provider did not open up on time. That's the only thing that people are going to remember, So,
and we've done that exact thing, set up in the hallway and basically like carried the equipment in and plugged it in. That's just what you do. And we recently, and obviously we couldn't be prepared for this. Fortunately, we obviously have somebody at the office, so we were able to address it. But recently, at one of our casinos, Green Valley Ranch, there was a car accident in front that hit a transformer, and the entire casino lost power. And we, of course, were having a wedding there at the time. So our staff called and they're like, hey, so everyone's just going to be sitting around for an hour. And we're like, no, you're not sitting around. Like, we ran out 3 jackeries and got the photo booth going and took the other jackery to the DJ. And of course, he was eternally grateful. Yeah. But we saved this entire wedding. The DJ, the lights, and the photo booth were running, and people, like, this entire casino was dark. This wedding was hopping. There's music, people are dancing, photos were taken, and and that is something that, as an employee, they're just like, sweet, power's out, everyone's going to sit around and tell campfire stories.
Chill. Yeah.
But as an owner, you've got to find a solution to get past it. And we became the hero that day of the entire wedding. Like, we saved this person's wedding.
And that follows you. That follows you through with your reputation and like the type of vendor you are. With that DJ, he's gonna forever remember you guys. the
Yes.
planner, the bride. I mean, it's really the whole concept of just taking initiative and doing what you have to do. Because there's things that I've had to do, like to make it happen. Sometimes if you have to walk down the street 3 blocks because they shut down the roads and you can't get your car into the venue, get out there, grab that photo booth and hike in, Uber in,
Yep.
bicycle in, do what you have to do, because the event, like that motto, what's that? The event must go on. Is that the quote? What's the quote?
That sounds like a quote. I mean, it is now.
It is, right?
I don't know.
No, it is. It's like,
the show must go on?
Must go on. The show must go on. You should know this in Vegas. The show must go on. So no matter what comes up, you have to find a way to get to where you have to be at the time you have to be it, regardless of anything unexpected that comes up, road closures, street closures, accidents, we've seen a lot.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like we had an event somewhere. We tried to, ever since the snap and get in, or whatever people call it, we try to make sure all our events with Snap are loaded prior to going, like not just in the cloud, but loaded onto the iPads. But we went out to this event and there was like 0 internet service. They couldn't refresh. They couldn't get the event downloaded. And we're just like, hey man, you got a rock and roller, right? Like, put the kiosk on the rock and roller, roll that shit down the hallway till you get service. Like, you find a spot. You find a spot.
You do what you got to do. Yeah. And then don't touch it after that.
There's always a way.
We pulled the min booth off the top of the stand, and we've carried that down the hill, because in Malibu you're like up in the mountains and the hills. We've like carried it down to the hill to the car to refresh.
I did that when I had an Aura. I just took the head off. I was at the Commonwealth and there was just like 0 internet. And I had to take the head off and take it down to Fremont Street to where there's service to refresh. But now we use Pearls where you can't take the head off. So we're just put that kiosk on a rock and roller and roll that down the hallway. Find a spot.
Yeah.
Find some Wi-Fi.
I mean, like for stuff like that, of course, we always try to update everything and refresh and have the event loaded. But just so everybody out there knows, there's occasion. Of course, you want to be prepared. You have your event loaded onto your booth prior to arriving so that you can avoid that. But for corporate events, because of those last minute changes, sometimes they ask you to change the logo, to move, graphics around, or maybe the graphics doesn't work with whatever install they have. So they make changes on site. That would be a situation where, no matter how prepared you are, you have to pull that photo booth onto a cart and roll out to update, because, you have to be prepared for those clients that ask for last minute changes,
Yeah, you can only be so prepared. Like, you can be prepared for everything, but I promise you, something's going to come up.
Something will still come up.
There's always something. Right.
And
especially
having the mentality of it's not my job. That's not my job. That's like the worst way to approach things in your business. That's the key takeaway.
If you find yourself saying that's not my job, then you have the employee mentality. It's not my job to do X.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard that. That's some unfortunate thing. I've heard that, like, oh, well, it is what it is. The overlay has a wrong date. Oh, well, what do you mean?
Well, the client approved it. So that's on them. It's not on them. Like, you're the professional.
Exactly.
Sure, they looked at the date, they okayed the spelling, but now they're telling you it's wrong. So how are you going to fix it?
Yes. Even if you're halfway through the event, even if the event's already finalized, you've already wrapped up, you're already home, find a way to fix that, because it does matter. It does matter. The attitude of like, oh, well, the client approved it. Oh, well, it's out of my hands. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Find a solution. You're probably still going to get a bad review, but you're still following through, at least fixing the mistake that you made. At least fix it,
Yeah. And on the subject of reviews, when you do get a bad review, I mean, it sucks, but it's going to happen eventually for most people. Like, the way that you respond to those reviews, first of all, you should be responding to all reviews, like the good reviews as well. Leave a response and like personalize it. Don't just give a canned response. Like, if I'm I don't leave a lot of reviews. And if I do, I don't expect someone to respond. But if they do respond, I'm kind of disappointed when it's a canned response, like just like, thanks for coming to our hotel. Hope you have a good vacation. And obviously at a hotel, it's a bad example because they don't know me or whatnot, but you do have a unique situation where you do know these clients and you can very easily say, I don't know, you did such an amazing job with the floral or, just whatever, just personalize it. And it's great. And it helps with your SEO as well. If you're using like Google reviews or whatnot, Google appreciates when you're responding to those reviews, and it makes you more relevant. So definitely respond to the reviews. But when you have a bad review, the same thing. Like, don't blame people. Like, accept the responsibility. Point out that you have other good reviews. Like, just say, "Hey, I'm sorry this happened. We try hard to be as good as we can. I hope if anyone's reading this, they can see that through the 100 other amazing reviews that we have, we whatever. I don't know what the situation might be, but definitely respond to the reviews. Don't ever say this was your fault or it was the florist's fault or whatever. Take responsibility.
Blame shift. Yeah.
Say how the problem was fixed. And point out like all the amazing reviews that you already have as well, but definitely reply to any negative or all reviews.
I don't have a lot of reviews, Jason. I have like 6. I have 6 reviews. I've been doing this for like 13 years.
I have a lot.
So you probably do because you probably have it built into your system to.
We have a very good review system.
I don't have that.
And it was important to us. So we, tweaked it until we had it right, and for the number of events we do, I guess we don't have that many on Google right now. I'd say that we have I know that we have over 100. Let me just type.
But you definitely do more than that.
Yeah. So we do, I don't know about Google is just trying to go to my website every time I type my business.
I think the whole response to like a complaint is a huge thing. We generally do really amazing. Like we blow most of our clients away, expectation wise, even though we sell ourselves and market ourselves like as an amazing, team oriented company. We still blow a lot of our clients, like we blow them away. But of course, there's moments where we drop the ball. I would say just off the top of my head, I would say maybe we've had like 4 or 5, which, for the amount of volume that we do, we're not volume, but we've been doing this for 13 years. And for the amount of events that we do, 4 or 5 is like not a lot. It's not something that you don't want to drop the ball. But when you do, I've had clients that I don't get reviews. Even when we drop the ball, those 4 or 5, when we drop the ball, they're not leaving us reviews. I have very intimate relationships with my clients, one-on-one conversations. So they call me and when they have a complaint, when your client has a complaint, I think the biggest thing that you should remember is being defensive and blame shifting and things like that. That's not how you want to approach a client who's upset with you dropping the ball. Understanding that a lot of people, when they're complaining or they have issues that you had from your event, they just want to be heard. They just want to know that you know what happened. They want you to hear their pain, if that makes sense. So empathizing with them and I feel like the hardest thing for us to remember is like, you don't have to blame anybody. There's such a thing as, we're just human. And I'm very direct with my clients. And I've had, one situation that came up where I don't know what happened. Our team was doing an amazing job. We were delivering a glam booth for like a religious group out in the LA area. Everybody was loving the booth. They were loving the team. They were engaging. They were fun. And for some reason, my team shut down 30 minutes early or an hour early for whatever reason. I get this phone call like, where's the photo booth? And I call my team and they're like, well, we shut down. We're supposed to be closed. And I looked at the time, and the time that we were supposed to end was something weird, like 11:45. So the client, because of our pre-event questionnaire, she wanted the event to start at like some odd time, like 6:15, because of like, you know, their
Right.
their invite time, whatever. So the end time was 11:45, a weird time. And my team misread, like, you know, you look at that time, it's so odd that their eyes went crossed. So when the client called me, she was so upset. She pretended she didn't know me. She was like, "Oh, I just had an event with you guys today," and very stern, very upset. And the thing is, like, just having that conversation, like, gosh, you know, like, we've been doing this for a long time. I have no idea what happened. But if you want me to tell you honestly, I think that it was just a human mistake. It's not me making an excuse for my team, because they should not have packed up 30 minutes early, but because there's no reason why my team would have done that. And the only thing I'm telling you this as direct as I can, this is my serious thought, is that I believe that they looked at the odd time, because we never stop at a weird time like that. And I think they just went cross-eyed, because when I'm looking at this time, I'm kind of going cross-eyed, you know? And she was like, as soon as I acknowledged that with her, her whole demeanor changed, because she wasn't really, she's not, what would the word be? Like, there's no malice behind her calling to complain. She really is upset that we shut down half an hour early.
And she has a valid complaint.
I had that conversation, she has a valid complaint. We dropped the ball on that. And I did not blame anybody. I didn't have any excuse for her. I just said, you know what? I apologize for that. That's not something that we as a company ever want to do, ever. And we've never had this happen. And I don't want you to think that I say this to everybody, because I've never had a call like this before, you know? And I just broke it down like, you know what? It's no excuse, but I don't think that they looked at the time and really registered, because it was an odd time. I think it was an honest human mistake, but here's what we can do. So, you know, acknowledging what happened, how we dropped the ball, and then, you know, offering, you know, a solution, or just asking her, like, what can we do to make this right? You know, being very direct with your clients. I think that changes the whole experience for them in terms of complaints, because the times, the 4 or 5 times that we've dropped the ball, I've had these clients call me back just very, very happy. They want to leave me a review, like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Lab." You know, so you can turn a complaint into a good experience, you know, and it's all a matter of like how you approach things. You know, if you're just like, "Oh, well, you know, we closed up because we closed up early because of that. They got, you know, there was a confusion because you gave us the wrong time. You gave us like this weird start time. So we couldn't figure out the hours." Like blaming or just brushing off the issue creates more animosity from your client. A lot of times just acknowledging them and hearing them. And I genuinely do not want to be, part of my mission statement is us being a photo booth provider that you, your family, your friends, you guys remember us, not just at this event, but like 10 years down the line. And when I get a complaint, that's something that I make sure, you know, I communicate that, like, we want to be the company you remember as being that amazing, that great team. And it hurts me to think that we dropped the ball. And this is my genuine response. It hurts me to hear that we dropped the ball at your once in a lifetime event. You know, it's not something that it's very rare that we've ever had that happen. And I'm so sorry. Just being very genuine. They really do. They do. They you know, they respond well to that. And being
people
genuine.
Are relatable. And
yeah.
I mean, the first thing, like, people naturally get defensive, and it, like, during a complaint, that's the very worst place to be defensive and standing your ground, especially if you're the one that did something wrong. But even if you didn't, don't be defensive. And people generally will like act the opposite way that you do. So if someone comes to you with a complaint and you, like you said, you brush it off and act like it's not a big deal, it typically will come out in the opposite direction. Like they will be offended by that, and they'll make it a very big deal.
More angry.
But if they come to you and you make it a big deal, like you were saying, "Oh my God, this never happens. I'm so sorry. This is what I think happened. What can we do to make it right?" Then they will typically take the opposite approach and make it a smaller deal, just because that's just typically the way that those things happen. So it's always best to make it a bigger deal to you, and typically they will make it a smaller deal to themselves and minimize the issue.
But be genuine, because it really is a big deal. Like, I do
Mhm.
not want my company to be the one that, that dropped the ball. It does happen, but I don't want to be that company. So it was the times that we've dropped the ball, it is a huge, huge deal to me, and being genuine when you communicate that with clients, they hear it, they know, they hear it in how you're speaking to them, the vibe that they're getting from you. They know when you're being genuine, and they
Sure.
appreciate it when you genuinely do care, that you drop the ball and that you really want to make it right, and sometimes it's a discount, sometimes it's an upgrade on their next event, whatever. Every
And
client's going to
sometimes
have
it's a
a
full
different
refund, if that's what it
sometimes
comes
it's a
down
full
to.
refund.
Like
Yeah.
we promise flawless events, and if your event is flawed, then typically, like, we didn't deliver what we said we'd deliver, so we'll refund you. And having the ability to do that comes from charging enough to be able to do that. Like, if you're charging $300 for an event, it's very hard to give any kind of refund back. But of course, I don't want to get into pricing. Before we wrap up, I did want to get back to, I didn't want to leave the review thing hanging. I looked. So we switched over to Google reviews in mid 2021. So we've had like just under 1,000 events since then, and we've gotten about just under 200 reviews. So about 20%, which is really, really high, because so many of our events, are booked through planners who the client doesn't even know us, or marketing events. Right. It's very rare that they leave reviews. So we're very happy with our number of reviews based on the number of events that we've had. We have had a number of planners leave us raving reviews as well. And of course, those are so valuable. And if you're lucky enough to have any of those, certainly use those to your fullest, put them on your website. And if these couples are talking to different planners, and those planners have endorsed you, because a planner reviewing you isn't just a review, it's a full endorsement, and treat it like an endorsement. So this episode has went off the rail. We from employee to owner to backup equipment to reviews, but that's okay. It's all been good stuff. And we are officially at our longest episode, an hour and 20 minutes. Hopefully we've got some people still listening. They didn't tune out halfway through. Hopefully we can keep people's attention an hour and 20 minutes. I guess we'll find out.
Hopefully it was valuable information that we spoke on.
Yeah, so that brings up, if you want to keep this valuable information coming to you, let us know. Pay us back by leaving reviews and engaging with us, liking, subscribing, all that stuff lets us know that you're listening, and
join our Facebook
motivates
group.
us to keep going. Join our Facebook group. Yeah, we've got a Facebook page where everything is released first because of how I set up our software somehow. So it goes to our Facebook page first, which is at facebook.com/ProBoothTalk. But our Facebook group right now has a very small number of people. So go join us in there. If you have some basic questions or whatnot that you want to ask or chat about. If you I've mentioned a few times, sending us your questions specifically as video. If you do that, you can send it to hello@proboothtalk.com. I've never told you how to do that before. So email it to hello@proboothtalk.com, and that will come to us. We'll collect those for a future question answer episode. And as always, thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Help to keep this free information coming. Subscribe to Pro Booth Talk in iTunes or Stitcher Radio. And while you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star rating. Finally, watch for show updates at facebook.com/ProBoothTalk.